Hi everyone, it's Natasha from Trader Profits here, and I want to talk to you today about human bias and its effect on trading. Now, it's a tricky one because it all happens subconsciously, but I think we can all agree that there's a difference between knowing what to do and automatically doing what you know. Now, the common notion is that when you have a good strategy, you stick to your rules, you are committed to success, and you review that you're on the right path to trading mastery. Now, the reason I mention review is because I urge all my students to keep a trading journal. From the beginning traders to the traders who are consistently making a 5 or 6 digit profit. Journaling gives you great insight into which areas you can improve. And when we go through the journal, there's generally a discrepancy between what is versus what could have been that cannot be accounted to the strategy. More often than not, it comes down to the execution, not sticking to the rules. Now, most traders are quick to take responsibility and claim lack of discipline. Even though they're committed to improvement and vow to be more disciplined, I invite them to dig a little deeper. What is the reason behind you not being disciplined? And 99% of the time the answer is, I don't know. This indicates a blind spot. Now, we are clever animals. When presented with a task repeatedly, however complicated, we find a way to identify patterns, make connections, and build the necessary skills, hacks, and muscle to complete the task in the quickest, most efficient manner possible. Now, we all know this to be true for physical exercise. When we have the same workout routine, for even as little as 4 to 6 weeks, our body adapts, making it possible for us to complete a workout with minimal effort. And the same is true for cognitive tasks. Now, we're exposed to vast amounts of information daily, but we only consciously process a fraction of this before it's lost. As a result, we have developed hacks and shortcuts to help us assess and assimilate this information. Now, the first step to uncovering our blind spots is gaining more awareness regarding our unconscious behavior. Through experience, constant testing, assessing, and fine-tuning our behavior and the results, we can influence our unconscious trading behavior and build these intuitive, habitual actions on the correct premises and attach the most fitting action. Now, I have asked one of our top traders to join us today. I'll allow him to introduce himself in a minute, but I will say this. He has over 15 years of experience trading and coaching thousands of traders around the globe, and he will share with you some of his insights regarding the most common biases that occur when trading and some tips on how to overcome these.
Hi traders, this is John here. First of all, I'd just like to thank Natasha for inviting me here to speak to you today. It's absolutely a pleasure to be able to share my 15 years worth of experience to all of our students. And I primarily head up the trading team, and I oversee all the content and trade alerts, research, courses that we provide, everything that we send out to our 10,000 clients really across the world. But this is what I love doing the most, because trading, I think, is very, very simple, but you've got to understand the obstacles you face every single day. Okay, some of those obstacles you've built up over a long period of time through your life experiences and subconsciously are affecting your trading activity. So we're just going to jump into some human biases that are apparent in every single one who trades. Most of the time, they don't even know about it, or you don't even know about it, but it's really important you understand that they're there so they become manageable and you can try to overcome them. So, without further ado, the first human bias that we're looking at here, if you look at the Hermann grid illusion, what you can see is the white dots at the center of the square, or each square, seem to shift from white to grey, even though they're just white dots. So how come we're actually seeing something that's completely different to reality? Now, many theories explain this, but they really come down to lateral inhibition and an important principle of perception. we don't always see what's really there. Our perception depends on how our visual system responds to the environmental surroundings we're in and how our brain interprets them. So this is really important. If you watch the last video series that Natasha did, the trader personality test, most people have some type of visual element in their trader personality style, and that visual element is a great tool. However, we've got to be careful of the fact that when we're looking at a trade or when we're looking at a potential trade, we tend to ignore the evidence that goes against our belief at the time. For example, you've been sitting there the whole day, you spent 3-4 hours waiting patiently for a trade, but you start to get a little bit antsy, right? Because you're sitting there for such a long period of time without being in a trade. So your perception or your belief at the time is that you want to get into a trade, right? You need to be doing something. If you're not in a trade, how can I make a profit? How can I reach my goals, and so on. So you start to see things that aren't really there because you start to ignore the evidence to suggest you shouldn't take this trade. And you only start to look at the evidence to say, actually, I want to get into this trade. So this is why it's imperative that you always follow your rules, because your rules provide an objective way to analyze the markets rather than you trading on what your perception of the market is telling you. Very, very important. Remember, your rules are or represent a bias in the market. It's your edge. It's a pattern that you've seen before, and it's a pattern that if you see again, you're going to execute a trade. Okay, and that's all trading is pattern recognition, right? Following a process, following a type of consistency. Sometimes when the markets are ripe for your edge, your consistent approach is going to serve you very, very well. Sometimes when the market is changing direction or going sideways, you may not be getting as many trades, but if you're as consistent, then when the optimum conditions turn up again, you'll be hitting those profits and you'll be getting returns, whilst other people basically just end up losing because all they're doing is just trading what their perception of the market is telling them rather than following a consistent method that will serve them well in the long run. So really, really important that you follow your rules as an objective way to analyze the markets. The second type of human bias that we're going to be focusing on here is, in the grey picture, you'll notice two circles. And if you focus on the center dot right in the middle, and if you move your head forward and backward relative to the screen, what will you start to notice? You start to notice that even though you're moving your head backward and forward, those circles actually start to move. Okay? And this is a great example to confirm how you must act as a trader. It's all about taking quick, positive decisions. Remember, trading is about making a decision to take a trade or to not to take a trade. Your rules will tell you whether it should be a long trade or should be a short trade and for how long you should be in the market. But your decision is to take a trade or to not take a trade. The longer you look at something, the more you think there is a pattern or something to trade. When you look at this, you'll just notice a dot in the middle and two circles made up of squares. But when you start to move your head backwards and forwards, you start to see a completely different picture, right? So it's really important that if you decide not to follow a rule-based approach, you have to understand that when you're sitting there looking, waiting for a trade, when you know the conditions aren't as optimal for what you're looking to do, your subconscious will start to see patterns when there are no patterns there. Right? So you have to take quick positive decisions, not just to take a trade, but to say to yourself, actually, you know what? There's nothing happening here. I need to move on. Next market, next strategy, next time frame. Okay, and if there's nothing here, okay, let me go and take a break. Let me update my journal. Let me review my trades. Let me do some back testing, whatever it may be. Let me do some research. It's important you take quick positive decisions to take a trade, to not take a trade, to analyze this market further, or to just move on to the next market. So let's have a look at a few other types of human biases that are causing your losses and what you can do about them. So the first one is representation bias. People assume that when something is supposed to represent something, that it really is what it is supposed to represent. For example, your favorite indicator represents the market. However, your indicator is just a shortcut for representing complex information. This is super, super important because there's so many tools out there telling you to buy here, sell there, or the market is overbought here, so it's going to turn, or it's oversold and it's going to turn there. And a lot of people assume that represents the market and what the market is doing. However, it's only representing a series of data sets and information and just putting it in a graphical format. And more often than not, it's telling you something that's already happened in the past, not something that's going to happen in the future. So it's important that when you look at indicators and when you start to look at tools, try to understand what exactly is this representing. Is it actually representing what the market is doing? Or is it just representing the fact that price is overextended right now? Okay? And when you start to look at the representation of your different tools that you're using, what you may find, and what I see a lot happening when we coach our students around the world, a lot of them using different indicators and things like that, because obviously they go off and learn their own things as well, in addition to the tools that we provide. And what they start to realize over time is the fact that a lot of the indicators are just telling them the same thing. Yep. And I don't mind using indicators. There's a few indicators that are very, very useful in the markets, but a lot of the indicators tell you the same thing, right? You need to get indicators that tell you different things, so you've at least got a wide breadth of different information at your fingertips. The next human bias is a lottery bias. This is where people want to control the markets as they feel they can control their outcome. Okay, they force a trade to realize their own beliefs or needs. This is really, really important. I mean, how many times have people felt not so great in their jobs, or things aren't going that well outside of your trading career, and life is pretty tough. You open up the market, it's so easy to place a trade. It's so easy to say to yourself, I just need a couple of trades and I'm there. Right? And all that happens is that you feel like you can control the outcome, you can control the result of the trade. But in reality, all you're doing is imposing your belief on the market. And again, it just highlights why having a set of rules, having a methodology is just so, so important. Okay, it's so easy to impose your beliefs or your needs on the market. But in reality, the market doesn't care, right? There's millions of people around the world trading the financial markets. And the only ones who are successful are the ones who just follow the rules. Sometimes it's going to work in your favor, sometimes it isn't. But if you're consistent over time, you will be successful. But if you try and control the outcome of every single trade, then you're going to trip up. Okay? You've got to remember, once you're in the market's going to do whatever it wants to do. Right? You have no control over the outcome. This is why we use stop losses and targets. Because once we enter the trade, that's it. We're left to the will of the market. It's either going to hit our stop loss or hit our target, but our job is over. Okay? Our job was to set the trade. So always remember the golden rule as well. Try to cut your losses and let your profits run. This is really, really important, because sometimes you're going to recognize that you're in a trade that you shouldn't be in, because actually, you know what, you just wanted to get in a trade, or you were thinking, actually, this trade is really, really good. Instead of me risking my usual $100 per trade, I'm going to risk $500 in this trade. So your risk management goes completely out the window because you're imposing your need to make an income or to make money onto the market. So in that instance, you've got to cut your losses. You've got to recognize that you made an error, and you just got to cut your losses. On the flip side of that is that if a trade is moving in your favor, you've got to try and allow that to run as much as possible. Okay, so really important you try and let your profits run, because if the market is moving in your favor, you want to try and ride that as much as possible. So let's move on to some other additional biases. Conservatism bias. This is when someone believes they have found something, they become convinced it works, and they'll do everything they can to avoid evidence to suggest otherwise. How many times have you been in a trade where you've been following, someone else who said, oh yeah, euro dollar's about to move higher, and you see all the analysts and research analysts telling you, oh, euro dollar's going to move higher, and you've done your own analysis and you're sold on the trade, euro dollar's going to move higher, okay, and you're so convinced that you're going to avoid any evidence to suggest otherwise. You're going to avoid, Mario Draghi coming out and saying they're going to do some more quantitative easing or whatever it may be. You're going to ignore all that evidence because you know what? You've done some really, really great analysis, okay, and you believe wholeheartedly that this trade is going to work out. Problem with that is you're ignoring evidence that the market is telling you it could not work out. And that is really, really important. I see far too often too many people are just too convinced on their trade. When our team send out trade calls and things like that, if we feel it's not working out, we don't hesitate to tell our members to say, you know what, this trade doesn't look like it's working out. The conditions have changed. We need to cut our losses. It might be the wrong decision to make with hindsight, but you have to make a decision at the time. So important. You've got to make a decision at the time. It might end up being wrong, but you have to be consistent with the evidence you have in front of you. Over time, okay, it will save you. But there are going to be occasions where it may not have been the best decision to make, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't stop making them. This other kind of bias that's so important to understand is the need to understand. We always try to make order out of the market and find reasons for everything. This attempt blocks one's ability to go with the flow of the market as we see what we expect to see rather than what is really happening. Again, this is another important consideration. Sometimes the market is going to do what it wants to do because the market doesn't move on fundamental criteria. The market moves based on how everyone is positioned, especially the foreign exchange market, which is based on supply and demand. All right, it can only move based upon how other people are positioned. Stock markets and things like that are a little bit different, but it's really important. You don't always have to find a reason why a market is moving. Okay, you just have to understand it's moving in a certain direction. That's it. And you also have the no protection bias. It may sound silly, but people just simply do not risk manage or position size correctly as they focus on their needs at the time rather than reading the market. Really important you guys are using stop losses. I'm sure many of you are, but it's so important you use a stop loss to manage your risk. But it's also important when you take a trade to know how you're going to exit that trade. And that's another key consideration. All right. Unfortunately, most traders over risk on their capital and blow themselves out before they can get on a winning streak or before they can understand how the game is supposed to be played. Please don't be one of those. If you want helps, tips, tools, tricks, strategies on how to trade the foreign exchange market, the stock market, the commodity market professionally, then go over to the traderprofits.com website where you'll pick up your free Trading as a Business guide, which has everything you need to know about trading the currency, stock and commodity market. It's got strategies in there and loads of different things to help you on your journey. Hope you found this video to be of use. We'll catch you on the next one, and don't forget to visit the website for that all-important free download, which is sure to transform your trading. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.